Hello YouTubers, I'm Danielle and this is Makeup Geek 1021. Today we are going to be going over the history of Cyclops, one of my favorite X-Men and one of the most underappreciated Marvel superheroes. Scott Summers was born to Christopher and Catherine Summers, growing up fairly well off with his younger brother Alex. One day, while Scott and Alex are on a vacation with their parents, their family's plane starts to malfunction and is about to crash. Scott and Alex are put into parachutes by their parents and are told to jump from the plane, which leads to Scott sustaining a head injury. Both boys are adopted separately, but Scott ends up staying in an orphanage in Nebraska, where once his mutant powers manifest, he is bullied and isolated and just left feeling a strong sense of loneliness. He eventually runs away from the orphanage after his ability of releasing optic blast beams becomes too much for him to handle, although he is taken to a specialist who gives him ruby quartz glasses that can help him hold back his optic blast beams. Scott is eventually taken in by a man named Jack Winters, but he is not a good person. Jack Winters is an ex-convict who decides to use Scott in gang wars and breaking and entering banks. Eventually, Scott gets found by Professor Charles Xavier, who takes him in as his legal ward and adoptive son to make him part of the X-Men. The team eventually gains other members, including Beast, Angel, the young rookie of the group, Iceman, and the sole girl on the team, Jean Grey, the very first love of Scott's life. Scott eventually falls madly in love with Jean, coming full circle to the Phoenix Saga, which just leads to even more revelations about Scott and his past. It is learned that his father hadn't died at all in the plane crash, but was instead captured by the Shi'ar Empire and formed up a group of space pirates. It is eventually learned the plane crash Scott got caught in as a child was staged by a crazed mutate named Mr. Sinister, who was revealed to be the one to give Scott his ruby quartz glasses and is obsessed with the Summers Grey family bloodline. Eventually, after Jean Grey's death at the hands of the Shi'ar, Scott leaves the X-Men out of depression and soon finds himself in comfort after meeting a woman named Madeline Pryor, a woman cloned from Jean's DNA created by Mr. Sinister. Scott marries Madeline, and together they have a baby boy named Nathan Summers, who is revealed to have been created to be the perfect weapon to fight Apocalypse. After Jean is resurrected and revealed to have not been dead the whole entire time, Scott leaves Madeline and Nate and eventually marries Jean, who is proven to be a very loving stepmom to Nathan. After Nathan gets infected with Apocalypse's technovirus, Scott sends his baby boy to the future to hopefully be cured, but in turn, Nathan comes back from the future to the past as a time traveler now known as Cable. And over the years, Scott has been shown to be a character that, you either love him or you don't. That's just depending on who is writing for him. Sure, he's made a crap ton of mistakes, from cheating on his wife Jean Grey with Emma Frost, and that is also leading around to his rivalry with Wolverine, and that actually comes full circle to the mutant civil war starting, known as Schism, which debated whether or not children should be allowed to fight on the front lines as mutant soldiers to fight off Sentinels on the island called Utopia, and that was formerly known as Asteroid M, which Magneto created to be a safe haven for mutants. And if you know anything about Wolverine during Schism, he was completely against the idea of mutant children even fighting off Sentinels, but Cyclops was all for it because he was like, they're making their choice. Like, they are choosing to do this to help them, and then that leads to them getting into an argument back and forth, and then that comes to full circle of Scott even bringing up Jean Grey, saying, Jean was in fear of you. She never loved you. But then Wolverine tells him, who do you think she would be afraid of if she were standing here now? And however, we should also note during Schism, Scott got a Presidential Medal of Honor, and his actions in Schism led into changes of him during Avengers vs. X-Men, where Scott felt that his adoptive granddaughter, Hope Summers, had enough power to jumpstart the world and reform the mutant population. And if you guys know anything about Hope Summers, she was created to be in Jean Grey's perfect image after the events of M-Day, which was where Scarlet Witch wiped out half the world's mutants' powers. And Scott believed his granddaughter from the future could make that difference, but this is where things get messy for Scott. Cyclops in the comics is a very militant person who was, he has always been the one to stick by authority and do everything by the book. He's huge on rules and regulations and people's freedom to choose. He's always been about mutant rights and mutants' rights to be free. And in the Avengers vs. X-Men, this is when he's faced against the Avengers with Captain America. They essentially want to take down Hope Summers, who is considered to be the messiah for mutants. And you can see where Scott's passion can lead to destruction because the Avengers, they're worried that Hope's powers and her connection to the Phoenix Force can lead to a mass destruction, that any power can be abused, which it's been proven with Jean Grey and with the Phoenix Saga. It's been proven that the Phoenix can wipe out whole, planets and stars and just about everything. But Cyclops was so passionate about protecting Hope and making sure that she was safe, and this leads to Scott being underneath the control of the Phoenix Five with Magic, Colossus, Emma Frost, and quite a few others. And, at this point, Scott, he is so deeply out of control with himself and his powers that he ends up killing Professor Charles Xavier. Scott is eventually infected with the Terrigen Mist during the death of X, with a battle, between Inhumans and mutants, because, the Terrigen Mists are deadly towards mutants. They're extremely deadly and can make mutants very, very sick, and Scott becomes infected with Mpox. And side note, that's actually a correction from my Inhumans Mutants video. It wasn't called Xpox, it was Mpox. It's Mpox, not Xpox. And this led to Emma Frost, his girlfriend at the time, covering it up. However, now in the comics, we are stuck with an Inhuman mutant half-breed clone thing of Scott named Teen Cyclops, who is revealed to have been created by Mr. Sinister. I mean, come on now. And eventually, during Phoenix Resurrection, a vision of the OG Scott is shown to the OG Jean Grey, who thanks to Phoenix for basically allowing her to see her husband one last time. And that's pretty much the last we've seen of the OG Scott Summers. Alright guys, that's my video covering the origins of Cyclops. Let me know in the comments below what superhero origin you'd like to learn about next, and I will be back soon with another video.